She declared, "My cat has more brains than you do," right there in front of almost 50 colleagues. And her father simply chuckled. I lowered myself, gathered the scattered mineral water bottles from the floor, and exited that strategy session permanently. They had absolutely no clue that the sole element sustaining their enterprise for 11 years was stored entirely within my consciousness. The genuine catastrophe was not my departure. It was the instant they grasped that they had just eliminated their own lifeline. My name is Vivian Mercer, and until 10 minutes prior, I served as the unseen adhesive binding a multi-million-dollar home furnishings dynasty together. Now I am merely the woman positioned outside Evergreen Summit Lodge without a jacket, observing my breath transform into pale vapor against the dimming horizon. The frigid alpine atmosphere cuts into my flesh, harsh and relentless, yet it registers better than the oppressive warmth of the conference chamber I just abandoned. Within that rustic, timber-constructed hall, 47 individuals are presently feigning that what transpired was amusing. They are feigning that brutality constitutes a leadership quality. They are mistaken. It was day 2 of the Ashworth Briar Furnishings yearly strategy gathering. We were 3 hours north of the metropolitan area, sequestered in an exclusive resort that charged more per evening than the majority of our distribution center employees earned in an entire month. The motif of the weekend was collaboration and foresight. The actuality was excessive alcohol consumption, obligatory team cohesion activities, and absorbing the leadership team's self-congratulation for earnings that were genuinely produced by the individuals they neglected to include. I was present solely because Thurston Wainwright, our chief executive, demanded that somebody needed to be accessible to address operational inquiries if they emerged. I was not present to formulate strategy. I was present to function as a mobile reference archive. The afternoon presentation was conducted by Celeste Wainwright. At 26 years of age, Celeste was the recently designated Brand Development Director. She was additionally Thurston's offspring. She occupied the elevated platform at the chamber's front, moving back and forth in footwear that was unsuitable for the irregular wooden surface. She was unveiling the introduction strategy for the Heritage Collection, a fresh series of exceptionally premium furniture designed to honor the organization's lineage. The paradox was that Celeste possessed zero understanding of lineage. She comprehended Instagram visual trends and depleting promotional budgets. I occupied the rear row documenting observations on a tablet device. I had already identified 5 significant logistics complications with her concept simply by examining her introductory slides. She desired Italian marble procured within 3 weeks. She desired hand-stitched leather from a processing facility that maintained a 6-month reservation queue. She was guaranteeing shipment dates that were materially unachievable unless we discovered teleportation technology. I maintained my silence, intending to message the operations executive afterward to discreetly resolve the chaos before it evolved into a catastrophe. That constituted my function. I resolved complications. I transformed the unattainable into reality quietly, so that individuals like Celeste could appear capable. Celeste was delivering an impassioned discourse about revolutionizing the domestic living environment. She extended her arms broadly to underscore the magnificence of her concept. It was a theatrical motion, practiced and dramatic, yet she had miscalculated her distance from the auxiliary table. Her hand collided with a grouping of premium crystal water bottles, the costly imported variety that Thurston required at every gathering. The noise was jarring. Crystal fragmented against the hardwood. Liquid dispersed across the platform's front and saturated the edge of Celeste's silk slacks. The substantial impact of the containers striking the floor reverberated in the elevated ceiling space. The presentation halted completely. Quiet descended over the chamber like a weighted covering. The stillness was total. 47 heads rotated toward the platform. Celeste gazed downward at the disorder. Her complexion reddened, not from humiliation, but from irritation. She examined the liquid absorbing into the premium carpet. Then she gazed upward. Her vision swept the chamber, bypassing the custodial personnel positioned near the entrance, bypassing the entry-level assistants in the second row. Her attention settled precisely on me in the rear corner. "Collect that," she stated. Her tone was measured. It was not an inquiry. It was the inflection employed for a disobedient animal, or a defective device. The chamber stayed motionless. My pulse pounded against my ribcage, a deliberate, weighty cadence. I gazed at Thurston Wainwright positioned in the front row. He was the chief executive. He was the individual who had employed me for 11 years. He understood that I coordinated the partnerships with 17 essential suppliers. He understood that I was the explanation our previous 3 merchandise introductions had reached customers punctually. I anticipated him to verbalize. I anticipated him to inform his daughter that the supplier partnership coordinator was not a custodian. Thurston remained silent. He merely observed, a subtle entertainment crossing his expression, inquisitive to witness if I would comply. I experienced the burden of 47 sets of eyes upon me. Several were understanding, directing their attention toward their laps. Others, the driven middle-tier executives who aspired to advance, observed with complete focus. This was an examination of devotion. In the environment of Ashworth Briar, degradation was the admission fee to the privileged circle. I rose, my seat grating against the surface, an abrasive sound in the hushed chamber. I proceeded down the central passage. My footsteps were consistent. I convinced myself I was a professional. I convinced myself that generating a confrontation would solely damage my profession. I convinced myself that I had a son at residence who depended on this income. I arrived at the chamber's front. I stepped onto the platform. The liquid was chilling around my ankles. I crouched. I commenced gathering the substantial crystal fragments. I was cautious. I arranged them onto a moisture-free portion of the table. I retrieved a napkin from the service arrangement and absorbed the most severe of the pool so nobody would lose their footing. I was positioned on one knee, cleaning the surface. When Celeste verbalized again, she had redirected toward the audience, recovering her composure, yet her microphone remained activated. She tilted toward the senior sales executive, who was positioned near her feet, and communicated loudly enough for the complete chamber to perceive. "My cat possesses more intelligence than you," she declared. She motioned loosely toward me with her presentation pointer. "I mean, at minimum he responds when I summon him without appearing like he's granting me a privilege." I became immobile. My hand was suspended above a crystal fragment. From the front row, a noise emerged. It was a laugh, a profound, visceral chortle. It was Thurston. He was crimson in the complexion, slapping his leg. "That's an excellent one, darling," Thurston bellowed. The barrier collapsed. Following the chief executive's guidance, the chamber burst into amusement. The senior sales executive snickered. The promotional team tittered. It was a surge of obsequious noise engulfing me while I remained on the surface. They were ridiculing me. They were ridiculing the woman who negotiated their agreements, who preserved their profit margins, who remembered their birthday celebrations. Something within me fractured. It was not a noisy fracture. It was a silent, conclusive mechanism, like a latch rotating. I did not gaze upward at Celeste. I did not gaze at Thurston. I elevated myself gradually. I positioned the dampened napkin on the table adjacent to the shattered crystal. I dried my palms on my garment. I rotated and confronted the chamber. The amusement diminished somewhat. Uncertainty as they perceived my demeanor. I did not appear furious. I did not appear sorrowful. I experienced complete, absolute numbness. "Where are you heading, Vivian?" Thurston inquired, still chortling. "We are not concluded here." I did not respond. I descended the platform stairs. I proceeded back up the central passage. I did not glance left or right. I proceeded past the managers, past the directors, past the senior executives. "Vivian, take your seat," Thurston commanded. His tone had abandoned the humor. It was a directive now. I continued advancing. I arrived at the substantial double entryways at the chamber's rear. I thrust them apart. The frigid atmosphere from the corridor struck my complexion. "You exit through that entryway, and you are terminated, Vivian," Thurston bellowed. I permitted the door to close behind me, severing his voice. I continued advancing through the reception area, past the front desk where the personnel observed me with alarm, out the primary entrance. Now I am positioned here beside my vehicle. The wind is howling through the conifer trees. My hands are trembling, yet not from the temperature. They are trembling from the adrenaline of absolute, unadulterated lucidity. I can still perceive the phantom reverberation of that amusement. They believe they just subordinated an employee. They believe authority is about who tidies the disorder. I extend into my pocket for my vehicle keys. My phone vibrates with an alert, presumably an email from personnel administration or a message from a coworker questioning if I've lost my judgment. I disregard it. I gaze back at the resort, radiating warm and amber in the dusk. Inside, they are presumably returning to their presentation, assured that the unpleasantness has concluded. They trust the apparatus of their enterprise will continue functioning tomorrow, precisely as it did yesterday. They trust they are the motor. If you believe this was merely an affront, you have not observed what they released along with those water containers. To comprehend why I departed from my profession with nothing except the attire on my person and a terrifying sensation of emancipation, you must comprehend how I entered through those entryways initially. It was 11 years prior. I was 29 years of age, and my existence was a disordered collection of cardboard containers and legal documents. My marriage dissolution had just been concluded, leaving me with a damaged self-regard, an exhausted financial account, and complete guardianship of my 6-year-old son. I was not the hardened strategist who just humiliated a chief executive at an alpine retreat at that time. I was frantic. I was a woman who verified her supermarket receipt 3 times to confirm she had not exceeded her allocation. I required stability. I required medical coverage. I required assurance that when I activated the illumination in our cramped dwelling, they would genuinely activate. When Ashworth Briar Furnishings extended me the position of Supplier Partnership Coordinator, I nearly wept with relief in the Personnel Administration office. The designation sounded significant. It sounded dependable. I envisioned spreadsheets, systematized filing structures, and a distinct collection of guidelines. I envisioned a professional progression that I could ascend one practical increment at a time. I was inexperienced. On my 3rd day, the woman I was succeeding pulled me aside. Her name was Francine Tolliver. She was 63 years of age with hair colored a defiant crimson shade and a countenance etched with the particular variety of exhaustion that originates from managing other individuals' emergencies for 2 decades. She was departing, relocating to Arizona to reside near her grandchildren, and she appeared like a captive who had just witnessed the warden unlock the gate. "Accompany me," Francine stated. She did not escort me to her workstation. She escorted me to the loading area, distant from the intrusive attention of the open configuration office. She ignited a cigarette, despite it being a smoke-prohibited premises, and observed me with a combination of sympathy and grave intensity. "You appear like an intelligent young woman, Vivian," she declared, releasing a column of gray vapor. "So I'm going to share the reality with you. If you attempt to execute this position, the manner the employee handbook specifies, you will be dismissed in 3 months." I gazed at her, grasping my notebook. I inquired what she signified. Francine laughed, a parched, rasping sound. She informed me that Ashworth Briar did not operate on logistics. It did not operate on standard procedural guidelines or comprehensive legal structures. It operated on the erratic impulses of Thurston Wainwright. "Thurston is miserly," Francine declared flatly. "He despises attorneys. He despises agreements. He despises compensating for software authorizations. He believes systems are for individuals who lack magnetism." She clarified that while we were a multi-million-dollar furnishings enterprise, our distribution network was maintained by handshakes and telephone conversations. We did not possess a centralized repository for our suppliers. We did not possess formal performance contracts with the sawmills in Tennessee or the textile artisans in Arizona. We possessed email conversations. We possessed adhesive annotations. We possessed the contact directory in Francine's personal mobile device. I inquired how we monitored orders. I inquired how we maintained supplier responsibility if a delivery was delayed or the quality was deficient. Francine touched her temple with a manicured digit. "It is entirely contained here," she declared. Then she commenced the genuine instruction. For the subsequent 2 weeks, Francine did not demonstrate how to utilize the computer infrastructure, because there genuinely was not one to demonstrate. Instead, she instructed me on the human landscape of our distribution network. She instructed me that the proprietor of the metalworking facility in Ohio was experiencing a difficult custody dispute. So you never contacted him before 10 in the morning on a Tuesday. She instructed me that the leather processing facility in Pennsylvania perpetually had financial flow complications in November. So if we prepaid 20%, they would prioritize our order above everyone else. She instructed me that the master craftsman at our primary woodworking facility was dignified and despised being rushed. Yet if you inquired about his vintage automobile restoration endeavor first, he would labor overtime without additional compensation. It was not information. It was intelligence. It was psychology. It was an intricate network of obligations, confidences, and emotional influence. I recall observing the accumulation of loose invoices and hastily written annotations on her workstation and experiencing a frigid knot of apprehension in my abdomen. "This is precarious," I informed her. "If something occurs to you, the enterprise halts." "That is precisely the intention," Francine declared. She extinguished her cigarette beneath her heel. "Attend to me. Thurston will never compensate you what you merit. He will never provide you a designation that reflects what you genuinely accomplish. But as long as you are the sole individual who understands that the textile supplier requires his payment mailed to his mother's residence to conceal it from the revenue authorities, Thurston cannot dismiss you." I observed her, horrified. It contradicted every professional instinct I possessed. It was disorganized. It was inefficient. It was a detonating explosive. "What if I desire to take a vacation?" I inquired. "What if I become ill?" "Then they endure until you return," Francine shrugged. "And they recognize they require you." I desired to dismiss her counsel. I desired to construct a proper infrastructure. I desired to establish a database, compose standard agreements, and professionalize the department. Yet then I returned to my dwelling. I observed the accumulation of outstanding invoices on the surface. I observed my son sleeping in his chamber, surrounded by second-hand playthings. I contemplated the child support disbursements that never materialized punctually. I recognized I did not possess the privilege of idealism. I could not afford to be merely another replaceable employee who occupied a position. I required employment security. I required to be invulnerable. So I made a determination. I resolved to heed Francine. I ceased attempting to systematize the documents. Instead, I commenced memorizing. I absorbed the names of every supplier's spouse. I absorbed who appreciated football and who appreciated opera. I absorbed which suppliers were covertly approaching bankruptcy and required early disbursements to persist. I became the confidant, the counselor, and the problem resolver for 17 distinct enterprises distributed across the United States. When a delivery of oak designated for dining tables was postponed because of a blizzard in the Midwest, I did not transmit a formal contract violation notification. I contacted the transportation dispatcher, inquired about his daughter's university application, and persuaded him to redirect a driver to retrieve our shipment at 3 a.m. The timber materialized punctually. Thurston never understood there was a complication. He merely observed the completed tables and presumed the infrastructure functioned. Yet the infrastructure did not function. I functioned. Year after year, I assimilated additional complexity. I became the conduit between Ashworth Breyer's impossible requirements and the material actuality of production. I protected the suppliers from Thurston's arrogance, and I protected the enterprise from the supplier's frustrations. I maintained the burden of the complete distribution network in my consciousness. I convinced myself I was executing it for the enterprise. I convinced myself I was being an exemplary employee. Yet fundamentally, I understood I was adhering to Francine's shadowy wisdom. I was rendering myself indispensable by becoming the sole individual who understood where the confidential matters were concealed. I recall one afternoon approximately 5 years into my tenure, when I occupied my workstation rubbing my temples, overwhelmed by the absolute magnitude of particulars I was managing. My son was unwell at school, yet I could not depart because a glass supplier in Vermont was threatening to suspend production unless I personally sanctioned a wire transfer. I experienced being trapped. I experienced the barriers closing around me. I contemplated Francine's statements. She had informed me this approach would maintain my safety. She had guaranteed it would provide me employment security. And she was accurate. I had received salary increases. I had survived workforce reductions. I was the primary resource for everything. Yet as I occupied that space listening to the dial tone, I recognized the dual-edged weapon of my circumstance. I had rendered myself indispensable, yet I had additionally rendered myself a captive. I was the guardian of a domain that existed solely in my consciousness. If I departed, it would entirely disintegrate. At that moment, that contemplation provided me a peculiar sensation of solace. It felt like authority. I did not comprehend then that authority is merely a snare awaiting activation. I did not comprehend that by rendering myself the structural support of the enterprise, I was guaranteeing that when the tremor ultimately arrived, I would be the individual anticipated to support the ceiling while everyone else fled to safety. I concluded the conversation, sanctioned the disbursement, and retrieved my bag to collect my son. I convinced myself I was constructing a future. I did not comprehend I was constructing an armament. I did not comprehend whether I was fabricating an escape mechanism or confining myself within a cell. All I comprehended was that for 11 years, I possessed the keys, and I never permitted anyone else to duplicate them. If you could examine my cranium and observe the manner my brain was configured after 11 years at Ashworth-Briar, you would not perceive neurons or synapses. You would perceive a cartography of the United States, yet not the one they instruct in geography courses. My cartography possessed only 17 coordinates of significance, illuminating like emergency signals in the darkness. There was a metalworking facility in a declining industrial municipality in Ohio that manufactured the brushed brass supports for our most successful coffee tables. There was a woodworking collective deep in the forests of North Carolina that transformed raw walnut into frames so refined they felt like skin. There was a family-operated textile facility in the high desert of New Mexico that created the precise shade of indigo linen our designers were fixated on. And there was a substantial glass facility in Pennsylvania that was the sole location on the eastern seaboard, capable of treating the oversized panels we required for our dining configurations. These 17 suppliers were the pulsating core of the enterprise. Without them, Ashworth-Briar was nothing except a symbol and an elaborate website. And yet, if you examined the enterprise servers, these locations did not exist. We possessed no customer relationship management software. We possessed no centralized supplier database. We did not even possess proper master service contracts. The complete distribution network of an enterprise generating tens of millions of dollars in revenue existed exclusively in a chaotic, sprawling archive of Outlook communications and a stack of paper invoices 3 feet elevated on my workstation. It was a procedural catastrophe. It was a detonating explosive, and I was the demolition specialist. My days were not occupied executing strategy. They were occupied extinguishing emergencies that nobody else could even detect the smoke from. I recall one Tuesday morning specifically. It was 3 weeks prior to the introduction of the autumn collection. I materialized at the office at 7 a.m. to discover an email from the New Mexico textile facility. The subject line was merely the word complication. The proprietor, a woman named Marisol, who had assumed the enterprise from her father, informed me that the most recent batch of linen had emerged streaked. The humidity in their drying chamber had elevated overnight. They could not deliver it. I did not panic. Panic was an indulgence for individuals who possessed alternatives. I understood that if that textile did not deliver by Thursday, the upholsterers in Virginia would possess nothing to cover the sofas with. If the sofas were not completed, the photography session in New York would be canceled. If the photography session was canceled, the catalog would be vacant. I retrieved the telephone. I did not contact Thurston. I contacted Marisol. "I understand you are stressed," I informed her, maintaining my voice subdued and consistent. "I understand you desire to re-dye the complete batch to render it flawless, but we do not possess time for flawless." Marisol was weeping. She was frightened that we would terminate the agreement. She understood Ashworth-Briar possessed a reputation for being ruthless with imperfections. "Attend to me, Marisol," I declared. "Transmit me a photograph of the streaks." She transmitted it. The streaks were subtle, a minor variation in the indigo intensity. To a perfectionist like Marisol, it was a catastrophe. To me, it was a possibility. I contacted the director of our design team. I did not inform him the textile was ruined. I informed him that due to a distinctive atmospheric condition during the drying procedure, the artisans in New Mexico had achieved a rare variegated finish that contributed texture and depth to the linen. I designated it the Desert Storm Wash. I informed him it appeared more costly than the solid coloration. The designer was enthusiastic. He believed it was brilliant. He sanctioned the variation in 10 minutes. I contacted Marisol subsequently. "Deliver it," I declared, "and invoice us for the expedited shipping. I will sanction it." That was the function. I was the interpreter between the disorderly actuality of production and the refined delusion of the corporate office. I occupied my days negotiating a ceasefire between physics and ego. Yet it was not merely about resolving errors. It was about finances. Ashworth Breyer was infamous for exploiting suppliers. Thurston would demand price reductions of 5% annually, regardless of the expense of raw materials. He would postpone disbursements for 60 days, 90 days, occasionally longer, merely to retain cash in his personal accounts. I became the intermediary. I understood which suppliers operated on thin margins and would collapse if a payment was delayed. I understood the glass supplier in Pennsylvania possessed a loan stipulation that required monthly cash flow. When accounts payable attempted to retain a payment for the Ohio Metal facility, I proceeded down to the finance department. I did not raise my voice. I leaned on the controller's workstation and fabricated. I declared, "If that payment does not dispatch today, they are retaining the shipment for the chief executive's personal office furniture." The payment dispatched that afternoon. It was a perpetual, exhausting, ethical acrobatics routine. I was protecting the suppliers from my own employer, and I was protecting my employer from the consequences of their own avarice. I was the sole explanation the bridge did not collapse, yet I was burning the candle at both extremities to maintain it standing. And for all this, for preserving the timeline, for managing the egos, for fabricating to finance, what did I receive? I received Thurston proceeding past my workstation, depositing a lukewarm coffee he had retrieved from the break room, and muttering his favored phrase, "Handle it, Vivian." He never inquired how I resolved the linen complication. He never inquired how I obtained the glass delivered during a blizzard. He did not care. As long as the merchandise materialized at the distribution center, he presumed the infrastructure was functioning. He did not comprehend that there was no infrastructure. There was merely me gazing at a spreadsheet until my vision burned. My bonuses were insulting. A $500 gift certificate at the holidays, a 3% salary increase that barely covered inflation. To Thurston and the executive team, I was overhead. I was an expense category. I was the woman who ordered meals and reminded them about invoices. They designated me the backbone of the office, in toasts at holiday celebrations. Yet they treated me like the furniture I assisted in constructing, functional, necessary, invisible. I suppressed the indignity. I suppressed it every single day. I executed it because of the photograph on my workstation. My son was maturing. He required orthodontics. He desired to participate in travel hockey. We resided in a secure neighborhood with quality schools, and the rent was substantial. I examined my financial account every month and convinced myself that I was fortunate. I possessed employment. I was indispensable. I was providing for my child. That was sufficient. Yet there was one moment approximately 3 years prior when the fractures in my determination genuinely commenced forming. I had invested weeks assembling a proposal. I had researched distribution network management software. I had discovered a platform that would integrate our orders, our inventory, and our supplier communications. It would automate the invoices. It would monitor quality control. It would establish a genuine database that belonged to the enterprise, not merely to my memory. It was costly, yet it would compensate for itself in 6 months by eliminating shipping errors. I scheduled a meeting with Thurston. I wore my finest suit. I had printed charts and graphs. I presented everything for him. I demonstrated how vulnerable we were. I clarified that if Francine had not instructed me, the enterprise would have stalled years prior. I clarified that we required institutionalizing this knowledge. Thurston examined the price figure on the final page. He did not even read the benefit section. He laughed. It was a dismissive, brief bark of a laugh. Why would I expend $50,000 on a computer program when I already compensate you to execute this? He inquired. I attempted to clarify. I attempted to inform him that I was one individual, and human beings possess limitations. I attempted to inform him that an enterprise of this magnitude could not operate on adhesive annotations and goodwill. You are executing an excellent function, Vivian, he declared, closing the folder and sliding it back across the desk toward me. Do not complicate matters. We are a furnishings enterprise, not a technology enterprise. Simply continue executing what you are executing. He examined his timepiece, signaling the meeting had concluded. I departed his office with my proposal in my hand. I experienced foolishness. I experienced insignificance. Yet more than that, I experienced a frigid recognition settling in my chest. He did not desire to repair the infrastructure because he did not value the labor required to maintain it. He believed what I executed was effortless. He believed it was enchantment. I returned to my workstation. I placed the proposal in the shredder. I observed the paper transform into fragments. If he did not desire an infrastructure, I would not provide him one. I would continue to be the mechanism. I would continue to retain every contact, every agreement, every confidence, and every solution inside my own consciousness. I did not comprehend it then. Yet that was the moment I ceased being merely an employee. That was the moment I became the most hazardous asset in the structure. Thurston believed he was preserving finances. In actuality, he was providing me the detonator. All I required was to await the appropriate moment to activate it. The commencement of the conclusion did not resemble an explosion. It resembled a 26-year-old woman in a designer blazer, entering the office with a latte in one hand and a mood board in the other. Celeste Wainwright had officially joined the enterprise. Her designation was Brand Development Director, a position that had been fabricated from nothing specifically for her. She had just concluded a graduate program in marketing, or perhaps she had just concluded a gap year in Europe. The particulars were unclear, and nobody dared to request clarification from Thurston. All we comprehended was that she was present to modernize Ashworth Briar. Modernize, in Celeste's vocabulary, signified disregarding the laws of physics. She swept into production meetings with the confidence of someone who had never constructed a single item in her existence. She did not desire to hear about lead times. She did not desire to hear about material scarcity. She desired things to be viral. She utilized that term in every sentence. She desired the furniture to appear excellent on social media platforms. I recall her second week vividly. She convened an emergency meeting to discuss the spring collection. She deposited a swatch of textile onto the table. It was a pale, iridescent silk. I desire the new sectional sofas in this, she announced, and I desire them in showrooms by next month. I examined the swatch. It was delicate. It was apparel-grade silk, not upholstery weight. If you occupied it while wearing denim, it would shred. If you spilled liquid on it, it would stain permanently. Celeste, I declared gently, that is dress material. We cannot upholster a sofa in that. It will not pass the durability testing, and even if it could, the weavers require 12 weeks for a custom run. She rolled her eyes. She genuinely rolled her eyes at me. You are so negative, Vivian, she sighed. Simply figure it out. Reinforce it with something, and compensate them extra to accelerate. My father states we possess the budget. She did not comprehend that you cannot compensate a loom to weave faster than it is mechanically designed to move. She did not comprehend that durability was not a suggestion. It was a legal requirement for furniture sold in the United States. Yet Thurston occupied the head of the table, beaming at his daughter's ambition. He perceived a visionary. I perceived a liability. Yet Celeste was only the first half of the pincer movement that was about to crush me. The second half materialized a week later in a charcoal gray suit and a cloud of expensive cologne. His name was Preston Blackwood. Thurston introduced him as the new vice president of global operations. Preston had originated from a massive logistics conglomerate. He communicated in a language entirely composed of buzzwords. He discussed leverage, synergy, optimization, and trimming the excess. He possessed a smile that did not reach his eyes, and from the instant he shook my hand, I understood he perceived me as something to be removed from his path. The summons to Thurston's office arrived on a Friday afternoon. It is the classic timing for unfavorable news in the corporate world. They execute it then, so you possess 2 days to compose yourself before you can take legal action or create a commotion. I entered. Thurston was behind his desk. Preston was occupying the guest chair, his lengthy legs crossed, tapping on a tablet. "Take a seat, Vivian," Thurston declared. He did not offer me coffee. He did not inquire about my son. He proceeded directly into it. "We are restructuring," Thurston declared. "With Preston here to assume operations and Celeste handling the creative direction, we are transitioning to a more corporate structure. We require scaling up." I nodded, awaiting the axe to descend. "Preston is going to be revamping the complete distribution network," Thurston continued. "We desire you to transition into an administrative support position. You will report to Preston. Your primary priority for the next month is to transfer everything." Administrative support. It was a demotion. It was an insult. It was a designation for someone who answers telephones and schedules travel. I examined Thurston. I examined Preston. "I manage 17 critical suppliers," I declared. "I handle negotiations. I manage crisis logistics. That is not administrative support." "It is now," Preston declared. His tone was smooth, like polished steel. "We require professionalizing the relationships. No more informal arrangements. We are going to implement strict performance indicators and competitive bidding. I require you to transfer all the supplier data to me by Monday." He extended his hand as if anticipating me to provide him a physical key. "I require the master database," Preston declared. "The login for the customer relationship management system, the agreement repository, everything." I almost laughed. I examined him, and for the first time, I recognized precisely how little they comprehended about their own enterprise. "There is no database," I declared. Preston froze. His smile faltered. "What do you signify?" "We do not possess a customer relationship management system," I declared. "We do not possess an agreement repository. We possess email conversations. We possess filing cabinets." Preston examined Thurston. "Is she serious?" Thurston waved his hand dismissively. "Vivian possesses her own method of executing things. That is why we employed you, Preston, to repair it." Preston redirected toward me. His eyes were frigid. "Acceptable. Then transmit me the spreadsheets, the master contact directories, the pricing history." "I do not possess a master spreadsheet," I declared. "I possess the contacts in my telephone. I possess the pricing history in my consciousness and in 5 years of individual invoices." Preston deposited his tablet. He examined me with unconcealed contempt. "Are you informing me," he declared, enunciating every word, "that a $20 million enterprise is operating its distribution network based on your memory? I am informing you that I have requested a budget to construct an infrastructure for 3 years, I declared. And Thurston declined me every time. I executed what I was required to execute to maintain things progressing. Preston reclined. He released a brief, sharp breath. He did not believe me. He believed I was withholding. He believed I was gatekeeping information to protect my employment. Acceptable, Preston declared. Then your function for the next week is to type it all out. Every name, every number, every agreement term. Place it in a spreadsheet. I attempted to warn him. I attempted to clarify the nuance. It is not merely names and numbers, Preston, I declared. You cannot merely email the proprietor of the woodworking facility in North Carolina and demand a 10% discount. He will depart. You must comprehend how they operate. Data is data, Vivian, Preston interrupted me. Relationships are inefficiencies. If a supplier cannot meet our metrics, we replace them. That is how genuine business operates. He was examining me like I was a relic, a dinosaur that did not comprehend the meteor was approaching. I departed the office. I returned to my workstation. My hands were trembling. I had been demoted. I was being directed to instruct my successor. And my successor was an individual who believed human connection was an inefficiency. Over the subsequent weeks, the atmosphere in the office became toxic. Preston would position himself over my workstation, demanding updates on the data entry. When I attempted to add annotations about a supplier's personal preferences or specific shipping peculiarities, he deleted them. "Merely the facts, Vivian," he would declare. "I do not care about their pet's name." He commenced copying Thurston on emails, complaining that I was being slow. He framed my caution as obstruction. He informed Thurston I was being difficult. He informed him I was resisting the new direction. And then arrived the final blow. Celeste entered the open office area one morning, clapping her hands for attention. "Excellent news, everyone," she chirped. To celebrate the upcoming introduction of the Heritage Collection, and to genuinely solidify our new team dynamic, I have reserved a retreat. She elevated a brochure for Evergreen Summit Lodge. "We are proceeding to the mountains," she announced. "Next weekend. It is going to be remarkable. We will have strategy sessions, bonding exercises, and most importantly, an opportunity to become aligned on the new vision." The chamber murmured with obligatory enthusiasm. I gazed at my screen. I understood I was required to attend. It was mandatory. Preston paused by my workstation a few minutes later. He leaned down, his voice subdued. "Bring your laptop to the retreat, Vivian," he declared. "We can utilize the downtime to conclude the data transfer. I desire everything out of your consciousness and onto my server before we return." I examined him. He was smiling. It was a predatory smile. He believed the retreat was going to be his triumph. He believed it was going to be the moment he ultimately extracted the final portion of value from me before discarding me entirely. Celeste believed it was going to be her platform to shine as the new leader. They perceived the retreat as a fresh commencement. I examined the brochure on Celeste's workstation. Evergreen Summit Lodge, 3 hours distant, isolated, frigid. I did not perceive it as a fresh commencement. As I examined Preston's arrogant countenance and Celeste's oblivious grin, I recognized what the retreat genuinely was. It was not a strategy session. It was an interment for the enterprise they believed they controlled. They merely did not comprehend it yet. "I will bring the laptop, Preston," I declared. "Excellent," he declared. "And improve your disposition, Vivian. Change is beneficial." I observed him depart. Unfortunate miscalculation. The journey down the mountain was completely dark. The winding roads of the pass were treacherous at night, demanding absolute concentration, which was a blessing. I could not contemplate the humiliation. I could not contemplate the amusement. I merely had to maintain the vehicle between the yellow lines. On the passenger seat, my telephone buzzed incessantly. It vibrated against the leather upholstery like an agitated insect. Thurston calling, then the Personnel Administration Director, then a message from a colleague inquiring if I was returning for the morning session. I extended over and held the power button until the screen went dark. The silence that filled the vehicle was the most costly luxury I had ever experienced. I did not return home to weep. I returned home to sleep. For the first time in 11 years, I did not set an alarm for 6 in the morning. I slept until 7, awakened, prepared coffee, and showered. I put on my most professional suit. I did not rush. I drove to the office in the morning traffic listening to a podcast about gardening. I experienced a peculiar detachment, like I was observing a film of my own existence. I entered the Ashworth Briar structure at exactly 8 in the morning. The office was quiet. Most of the executive team, including Celeste and Preston, were presumably still at the resort or driving back, nursing hangovers and egos. Yet Thurston was present. Thurston was perpetually present early. It was the one characteristic I respected about him, though today it was simply convenient. His door was open. He was reading a newspaper, a half-consumed bagel on his desk. When he observed me standing in the doorway, he lowered the paper. He appeared annoyed rather than apologetic. He appeared like an individual who was prepared to deliver a lecture on professionalism. "You created quite a scene last evening, Vivian," Thurston declared. His tone was gravelly. "I expect you to apologize to Celeste when she arrives. We are a family enterprise. We do not depart from meetings abruptly." I did not step into the chamber. I remained by the door frame. I extended into my bag and extracted a single white envelope. I advanced forward and placed it gently on top of his newspaper. "I am not apologizing, Thurston," I declared. And I am not departing abruptly. I am leaving. He frowned, examining the envelope without touching it. What is this? It is my resignation, I declared, effective immediately. Thurston laughed. It was a nervous sound, lacking the resonance of his laugh at the retreat. Do not be dramatic. You are upset. Take a personal day. We will discuss this on Wednesday. I am not taking a personal day, I repeated. I am resigning. Today is my final day. Actually, right now is my final moment. Thurston finally retrieved the letter. He scanned it and his countenance went pale. The reality of the timeline crashed into him. You cannot execute that, he sputtered. We are 6 weeks away from the Heritage Collection introduction. We have containers on the ocean. We have production schedules to finalize. You cannot merely depart in the middle of an introduction. I examined him calmly. I contemplated the 11 years of missed athletic events. I contemplated the evenings I remained up until 2 a.m. tracking deliveries. I contemplated the cat comment. I can actually, I declared. It is an at-will employment state, Thurston. You can dismiss me without cause, and I can depart without notice. But the suppliers, he declared, his voice rising. Preston does not comprehend them yet. He has not concluded the transition. You require staying at least 2 weeks. You must transfer the contacts. I smiled. It was a polite, professional smile. Data is data, I replied. He possesses the spreadsheets I typed up last week. He declared relationships are inefficiencies. I am certain he will be acceptable. Thurston rose. He slammed his hand on the desk. This is unprofessional, Vivian. If you depart through that entryway now, do not expect a reference. Do not expect severance. I do not expect anything from you, Thurston, I declared. I have not for a long time. I rotated and departed. He shouted my name, yet I continued moving. I proceeded to my workstation. It required me exactly 20 minutes to pack up 11 years of my existence. I possessed 2 cardboard containers. Into them went the framed photographs of my son, a coffee mug that declared World's Mom, a stash of emergency chocolate, and a sweater I maintained for when the climate control was too intense. I abandoned the documents. I abandoned the stack of invoices. I abandoned the adhesive annotations. I abandoned the company telephone. The office was commencing to fill up with junior personnel. They observed me with wide eyes, sensing the energy shift. They understood something significant was happening. I observed Francine's successor in personnel administration peeking out from her cubicle, yet she did not approach me. No one approached to say goodbye. There was no cake. There was no card. The individuals I had labored with for over a decade remained affixed to their screens, frightened that if they acknowledged me, they would catch the contagion of my insubordination. I carried my containers to the elevator. I pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors slid closed, I observed Preston entering from the elevator bank across the corridor, fresh from the retreat, appearing tan and rested. He observed me holding the containers. He paused. He appeared confused for a split second, and then he smirked. He believed I had been dismissed. He believed he had won. I permitted the doors to close on his smirk. I proceeded to my vehicle. I loaded the containers into the trunk. I occupied the driver's seat and took a deep breath. The atmosphere smelled like exhaust fumes and freedom. For the subsequent 3 days, my personal telephone did not cease ringing. I had blocked the office numbers, yet they called from cellular telephones. Thurston left 6 voicemails. The first 2 were angry. The third was bargaining. He offered me a 10% salary increase. The fourth was threatening legal action for abandonment of duty, which I understood was a bluff. The fifth was pleading. Vivian, the textile for the sectionals is detained in customs, he declared in the message. The broker will not communicate with Preston. Contact me back. I deleted it. Then Preston called. He left a message that was clipped and arrogant. Vivian, answer. The password you left for the logistics portal is not functioning. Cease playing games. I had not left a password because there was no portal. It was a personal login I had created on my own time. I deleted the message. The Personnel Administration Director transmitted an email to my personal address, threatening to withhold my final compensation if I did not return enterprise property. I replied with a photograph of the enterprise telephone positioned on my empty workstation. I occupied those 3 days executing things I had not executed in years. I cleaned my dwelling. I prepared a lasagna from scratch. I went for a walk in the middle of the afternoon on a Tuesday. I observed the birds. I recognized how tight my shoulders had been, how my jaw had been clenched for a decade. On Wednesday evening, my son entered the kitchen. He was 17 now, tall and observant. He had observed me pacing the floor for years, perpetually tethered to my telephone. He observed me chopping vegetables at 5 in the evening, the telephone nowhere in sight. "Mom," he declared, leaning against the counter. "You genuinely resigned." I nodded. "I did. Are we going to be acceptable?" he inquired. He signified finances. He signified the future. I examined him. I experienced a surge of apprehension. Yes, yet it was cleaner than the dread I used to experience every Sunday evening. "We will be acceptable," I declared. "I possess savings, and I possess a brain." He took a piece of carrot from the cutting board. "You appear different," he declared. I deposited the knife. "How?" "You appear like you are genuinely present," he declared. I embraced him. Then I held on tightly. He was accurate. For 11 years I had been physically present yet mentally located somewhere between a shipping container in Long Beach and a sawmill in North Carolina. I had provided Ashworth Breyer the finest years of my cognitive existence. "I am present now," I whispered. I released him and returned to cooking. The telephone on the counter illuminated again. It was a number I recognized. It was the proprietor of the metalworking facility in Ohio. He was calling my personal line. I hesitated. I appreciated him. He was a decent individual. Yet if I answered, I would be drawn back in. I would be resolving their complications again. I permitted it to ring. The screen went dark. They believed I was punishing them. They believed I was occupying my residence, wringing my hands, awaiting them to plead so I could feel significant. They believed this was a negotiation strategy. They were mistaken. I was not angry. Anger implies that you still care about the outcome. Anger implies that you are still engaged in the conflict. I was not conflicting. I had simply executed the one action they never anticipated. I had removed my hand from the mechanism, and without my hand to maintain it steady, the components of their precious machine were about to grind each other into fragments. It commenced with a single telephone call on a Thursday morning, 4 days after I departed. It was not from Ashworth Breyer. It was from a number with a Pennsylvania area code. I recognized it immediately. It was Wallace, the floor manager at the glass tempering facility. He was an individual of few words, usually irritable, who had labored in glass for 4 decades. He never called merely to chat. I answered. "Wallace," I declared. "How are you?" "Who is this individual, Preston?" Wallace inquired. His voice was tight with irritation. "He just contacted me. He demanded I advance your order by 2 weeks. He called me Buddy. I have been executing this since before he was born. I do not appreciate him." I sighed. "I am sorry, Wallace. I do not work there anymore." "Preston is the new vice president of operations." There was an extended silence on the line. Then Wallace swore, a colorful, inventive string of curses. "You resigned?" he inquired. "I did," I declared. "Then who is going to sanction the variance on the thickness for the coffee tables?" Wallace inquired. "We have the glass on the cutting table right now." "I do not know, Wallace," I declared honestly. "That is Preston's function now." "Well, Preston informed me he does not desire to hear about variances," Wallace grumbled. "He informed me to merely get it executed. He does not comprehend what he is discussing. Vivian, if we cut it the manner he desires, it will fracture in the shipping containers." I experienced the old reflex activate. The urge to repair it, the urge to inform Wallace to adjust the temper setting by 5 degrees and invoice it as an expedited charge. Yet I stopped myself. I was not being compensated to repair it. And more significantly, I possessed no authority. "Wallace, attend to me," I declared, maintaining my voice clear and deliberate. "Do not execute anything on a verbal directive. If he desires you to cut it, Make him transmit you an email specifying exactly what he desires. Obtain it in writing. Protect yourself. But we have perpetually executed it on a handshake, Vivian, Wallace declared. Because I trust you. I understand, I declared gently. But I am not present. You require looking out for your enterprise now. Do not cut a single panel of glass until you possess a purchase order with the correct specifications signed by him. Wallace grunted. Understood. Thanks, Vivian. You are a decent person. He hung up. That was the first domino. By Friday afternoon, the barriers had opened. My personal telephone was buzzing every hour. It was the woodworkers in North Carolina. It was the textile artisans in New Mexico. It was the metalworking facility in Ohio. The narrative was identical every time. Preston had contacted them. He had been arrogant. He had been dismissive. He had treated these proud craftsmen and women like vending machines that were malfunctioning. He informed me my prices were inefficient. The proprietor of the textile facility informed me, sounding close to tears. He declared he could obtain the same linen from overseas for half the price. I informed him to proceed and execute it then. He demanded to examine our safety records, the metalworking fabricator declared. Who does he believe he is? A federal inspector? To each of them, I provided the identical counsel. I did not disparage the enterprise. I did not inform them to cease working. I simply informed them to adhere to standard business practices. Obtain an agreement, I declared. Obtain a deposit. Do not deliver until the invoice is compensated. It was simple counsel. It was professional counsel. Yet in the ecosystem of Ashworth Briar, it was a death sentence. Preston, in his infinite wisdom, determined that the suppliers were bluffing. He believed they were merely attempting to squeeze him. So he escalated. On Monday of my second week of unemployment, I heard from Francine's old associate in accounting that Ashworth Briar had transmitted legal letters, a blanket email distribution from their external counsel to all 17 key suppliers. The letter was aggressive. It reminded the suppliers of their contractual obligations to meet the production schedule for the Heritage Collection. It threatened legal action for any delays. It utilized words like breach of contract and damages. It was a bold maneuver. It was additionally a foolish one because, as I had attempted to inform Preston, and as Thurston understood but chose to disregard, there were no agreements. The response from the suppliers was swift and brutal. I heard about it from the proprietor of the upholstery facility in Virginia. He contacted me, laughing so hard he could barely speak. Vivian, you are not going to believe this, he declared. They threatened to sue me for breach of contract. So I contacted my attorney. And you comprehend what he declared? He declared, ask them to produce the agreement. So did you? I inquired. I did, he declared. I transmitted them an email back. I declared, Dear Mr. Blackwood, please forward the signed agreement you are referring to. In the meantime, please note that your account is 90 days past due. That was the twist that Preston had missed. In his rush to optimize, he had not examined the accounts payable aging report. Thurston had been floating the enterprise on the supplier's goodwill for years. He compensated them late, sometimes 3 or 4 months late. They tolerated it because I contacted them and reassured them. They tolerated it because I ensured the critical disbursements went out just in time. Yet without me, and with Preston insulting them, the goodwill evaporated. Suddenly, 17 suppliers recognized at the same moment that they were holding hundreds of thousands of dollars in unpaid invoices, and they recognized that the enterprise threatening to sue them possessed no legal standing. The emails commenced pouring into Ashworth Briar. Please be advised that all production is on hold until outstanding balance of $42,000 is compensated in full. We are ceasing operations on your order due to lack of a valid service agreement. Future deliveries will be cash on delivery only. The Heritage Collection was not merely stalled. It was being held hostage by the very individuals Thurston had underestimated. Preston attempted to backtrack. He attempted to contact them. He attempted to be charming, yet it was too late. He had already revealed his teeth. When he contacted the glass facility, Wallace did not even answer. He merely forwarded the call to his voicemail, which was full. I occupied my dwelling drinking tea, observing the rain strike the window. I experienced a peculiar sensation of calm. I was not executing this. I was not manipulating strings. I was simply permitting gravity to take its course. Then arrived the message from Thurston. It appeared on my screen at 8 p.m. "You are vindictive," it read. "You are destroying this enterprise because of a joke Celeste made. Grow up, Vivian. Repair this." I examined the message. I contemplated the water containers. I contemplated the amusement. I contemplated the manner he had dismissed my request for an infrastructure as a waste of finances. He still did not comprehend. He believed this was personal. He believed I was actively sabotaging him. He could not conceive of a world where his enterprise failed simply because it was poorly operated. I typed a reply. My fingers moved steadily over the glass screen. "I am not destroying anything, Thurston," I wrote. "I merely stopped preserving it." I activated send. I deposited the telephone. The silence in the chamber was not empty. It was full of possibility. The machine was breaking mechanism by mechanism. And for the first time in my existence, I was not the mechanic. I was merely a witness. And the view was spectacular. The first week of my unemployment experienced less like a vacation, and more like a recalibration of my own biology. For 11 years, my stress hormones had been permanently set to fight or flight. I was accustomed to awakening with a racing heart, already mentally drafting apology emails for delays I did not cause. Now, I awakened to the sound of birds and the smell of coffee that I genuinely possessed time to drink while it was warm. I drove my son to school in the mornings. I did not examine my email at red lights. I prepared dinner without a telephone propped up against the cutting board. I even organized the linen closet, folding towels with a meditative slowness that experienced like an indulgence. It was a detox. I was flushing the toxicity of Ashworth Briar out of my system, one quiet hour at a time. Yet silence, I learned, possesses a method of becoming loud. By the 5th day, I found myself examining my telephone merely to ensure it was still functioning. The chaos had been terrible, yet it had additionally been purposeful. Without the emergencies to extinguish, I experienced a peculiar hollow space where my adrenaline used to be. Then arrived the call that changed the texture of the silence. It was Tuesday afternoon. I was in the middle of repotting a fern on my balcony when my telephone buzzed. It was a number I did not recognize, yet the area code was local. I wiped the soil from my hands and answered, anticipating a telemarketer, or perhaps another panicked voicemail from an Ashworth Briar junior manager. "This is Vivian," I declared. "Hello, Vivian. My name is Beckett Harrington." The voice was calm, subdued, and distinct. It lacked the frantic urgency I was accustomed to hearing from individuals in the industry. "I am the chief executive of Ironwood Alliance Partners," he continued. "I hope I am not disturbing you." I paused. I comprehended the name. Ironwood Alliance was a boutique firm, much smaller than Ashworth Briar, yet they possessed a reputation for quality. They functioned as a high-end intermediary, connecting artisan workshops with luxury retailers who desired to sell ethically sourced goods. "You are not disturbing me," I declared, leaning against the railing. "How did you obtain my number?" "I obtained it from Marisol at the textile facility in New Mexico," Beckett declared, "and Wallace in Pennsylvania, and approximately 3 others. I experienced a spike of defensiveness. I hope they did not involve you in the disorder with my former employer. I am not seeking to be a consultant for that catastrophe." Beckett chuckled softly. "No, Vivian. They are not requesting assistance with Ashworth Briar. They are informing me that I require employing you." I straightened. "Excuse me?" "I was on a conversation with Marisol yesterday discussing a new textile line," Beckett explained. "She was upset about how she had been treated by your successor. She informed me that the sole explanation she had remained with that agreement for so long was because of you. She declared, and I am quoting here, that you were the only individual in a suit who ever treated her like a human being." I experienced a lump form in my throat. I had invested years believing I was merely a buffer, a shock absorber. I did not recognize I had been constructing a legacy. "I would like to purchase you a coffee," Beckett declared. "I desire to discuss with you about what we execute at Ironwood Alliance." I agreed to meet him the following morning. I selected a small independent cafe downtown, Neutral Ground. I materialized 10 minutes early, wearing a blazer over jeans, professional yet not corporate. Beckett Harrington entered right on time. He was in his late 40s, wearing a corduroy jacket and appearing more like a university professor than a chief executive. He shook my hand firmly and ordered a black tea. He did not commence with a pitch about revenue or growth targets. He commenced with a question. "Why did you remain there so long?" he inquired. It was a direct question. It caught me off guard. "I required the employment," I declared simply. "I possess a son, and I believed I was essential." "You were essential," Beckett declared. "But you were essential to a broken machine." He took a sip of his tea and examined me with an intensity that was unsettling, yet not unkind. "I operate my enterprise differently, Vivian. We are not as large as Ashworth Briar. We do not possess their volume, yet we possess something they do not. We possess the trust of the makers." He opened a leather folder and slid a piece of paper across the table. It was not a job description. It was a manifesto. Fair agreements, fair compensation, documented properly. That is our motto, Beckett declared. We do not exploit suppliers. We partner with them. We compensate a deposit of 50% upfront. We possess clear timelines, and most importantly, we possess ironclad agreements that protect both sides. I examined the paper. It was everything I had pleaded Thurston for. It was the holy grail of distribution network management. "So, why do you require me?" I inquired. "If you are already executing this, what is my position?" Beckett leaned forward. "Because we are growing, and as we grow, I am frightened of losing that personal touch. I require someone who comprehends the human element of logistics. I require someone who understands that a delayed delivery is usually a family crisis, not a laziness issue." He named a salary. It was approximately 10% less than what I had been making at Ashworth Briar. "I understand it is a step down in compensation," he admitted. "We are a smaller vessel. Yet I can offer you something Thurston never did." I examined him, awaiting the catch. "I can offer you sanity," he declared. I hesitated. The finances were tight, yet manageable. The genuine issue was the trauma of the previous decade. "Beckett," I declared, choosing my words carefully. "I appreciate the offer, yet I require being honest. I am exhausted. I invested 11 years carrying an entire enterprise's logistics in my consciousness. I was the database. I was the filing infrastructure. I do not desire to be that individual again. I do not desire to be the one who cannot take a vacation because the knowledge is confined in my skull." Beckett smiled. A genuine, warm smile. "That is exactly what I do not desire," he declared. He tapped the table. "I am not employing you to be the database, Vivian. I desire to employ you to construct the database." I blinked. "What?" "I desire you to come on as our Director of Supplier Partnerships," Beckett declared. "Yet your first project is not chasing orders. Your first project is to lead the standardization of our complete network. I desire you to design the agreements. I desire you to construct the workflows. I desire you to create an infrastructure so robust, so transparent, and so efficient that you could disappear for a month and the enterprise would continue humming." He reclined. "I do not desire you to carry the load, Vivian. I desire you to construct the vehicle that carries it for us." I gazed at him. For the first time in my profession, someone was requesting me to utilize my brain, not merely my memory. He was requesting me to institutionalize the empathy and logic I had developed over a decade. "You desire me to write the rules?" I inquired. "I desire you to write the code of ethics," Beckett corrected. "I desire you to create the standard for how artisans and retailers should work together in America." It sounded too good to be true. It sounded like the variety of promise that vanishes after the first quarter. "How do I understand you mean it?" I inquired. "How do I understand I will not merely be chasing invoices again in 6 months?" Beckett extracted a document from his folder. It was an employment agreement. "Read page 4, he declared. I turned to the page. There was a clause under key responsibilities. "Employee shall possess full autonomy to implement and enforce ethical sourcing standards. Employee shall not be required to engage in predatory negotiation tactics. Employee is mandated to document all processes to ensure redundancy and work-life balance. It was in black and white, a legal guarantee of a healthy work environment. I gazed up at Beckett. He was observing me. "You are not a bottle collector, Vivian," he declared, referencing the narrative Wallace had shared with him about the retreat. "You are a relationship architect. I desire you to construct bridges, not merely cross them." I experienced a shift inside me. It was the sensation of a lock clicking open, the shame of the previous week, the sensation of being a discarded servant, evaporated. I was not a servant. I was an expert, and for the first time, I was positioned across from someone who comprehended the difference. I retrieved the pen. "I possess a few conditions," I declared. "Name them," Beckett replied. "I desire full control over the supplier onboarding process," I declared. "And I desire Fridays to be meeting-free so I can focus on the documentation." "Done," Beckett declared without hesitating. I signed the paper. As I departed the cafe, the sun was shining. I examined my financial account on my telephone. The balance was lower than I would have preferred, and the new salary would require some adjusting to. Yet, as I proceeded to my vehicle, I recognized something profound. I was not merely trading one employment for another. I was trading an existence of being a concealed weapon for an existence of being a builder. Thurston had utilized me as a crutch to support his broken limb. Beckett was requesting me to assist him construct a house that could stand on its own. I entered my vehicle and examined the dashboard. My telephone was silent. No panic, no emergencies, merely a calendar invitation for my first day at Ironwood Alliance. I started the engine. For the first time in 11 years, I was driving toward something, not merely running away. The ink on the agreement was still wet when Marisol, the proprietor of the New Mexico textile facility, gazed up at me with tears in her eyes. We were positioned in the conference chamber at Ironwood Alliance, a space that smelled of cedar and fresh coffee, not fear and ozone. "You signify that if the retailer cancels the order after I have already dyed the wool, I still receive compensation?" Marisol inquired. Her voice trembled slightly, as if she were awaiting the trap to snap shut. I pointed to Clause 4, Paragraph 2. "I do not signify maybe, Marisol," I declared softly. "It is written right there. 50% deposit upon ordering, and the remaining 50% is guaranteed once production commences regardless of downstream cancellation. You are not a financial institution, Marisol. You should not be financing our client's inventory risk." Marisol released a breath that sounded like it had been held for a decade. She signed the document. For the first time in our lengthy professional relationship, she did not appear like a woman bracing for impact. She appeared like a business partner. This was the new actuality I was constructing. At Ironwood Alliance, we were not burning bridges. We were reinforcing them with steel and concrete. Beckett Harrington had provided me the autonomy he promised, and I was utilizing it to systematically dismantle the culture of exploitation that was standard in our industry. We reached out to the suppliers I comprehended, the metal workers in Ohio, the woodworking facility in North Carolina, and we offered them something radical: safety. We did not steal them from Ashworth Briar. We simply offered them a life raft while the vessel they were on was sinking. They climbed aboard, not because I requested them to, yet because they were drowning. Yet the genuine turning point, the moment where the scales genuinely tipped, happened 3 weeks into my new position. Beckett summoned me into his office. He possessed a peculiar expression on his countenance, half amused, half serious. "We just received an urgent request for proposal," Beckett declared. "It is from Meridian Home Collections." My eyebrows elevated. Meridian Home Collections was a massive national retailer. They were the whale that every supplier desired to land. They were additionally the primary introduction partner for the Heritage Collection at Ashworth Briar. "Why are they transmitting a request for proposal now?" I inquired. "The fall season is already locked." "Apparently not," Beckett declared. He slid the email printout across the desk. "They possess a hole in their inventory, a massive Heritage Collection-sized hole. Their current supplier has defaulted on the delivery timeline 3 times in the previous month. They are seeking a replacement vendor who can execute a high-end living room collection in 12 weeks. I read between the lines. Ashworth Briar had choked. Without the suppliers on board and with Preston Blackwood attempting to optimize relationships that were already dead, they had missed their shipping windows. Meridian Home Collections was furious, and they were seeking a savior. "We can execute this," I declared. "I comprehend the capacity of the network. If we simplify the design slightly to account for the rush, we can achieve that date." We proceeded to the pitch meeting 2 days later. I entered the Meridian headquarters, flanked by Beckett and our head designer. The buyer, a sharp woman named Dominique, whom I had only ever emailed, gazed up as we entered. Her eyes widened slightly when she observed me. "Vivian Mercer?" she inquired. I nodded. "Good to see you, Dominique. I believed you were at Ashworth Briar," she declared. "I have been attempting to obtain a straight answer out of an individual named Preston for weeks. He continues informing me the delay is due to global shipping headwinds." I occupied a seat and opened my folder. "I cannot speak to what is happening there," I declared diplomatically. "Yet I can inform you that the headwinds are manageable if you possess the right sales. We did not disparage my former employer. We did not require to. We simply laid out our plan. We demonstrated the signed agreements with the suppliers, the very same suppliers Meridian appreciated. We demonstrated our transparent pricing model. We demonstrated a production schedule that was based on actuality, not wishful thinking." Dominique examined the proposal. Then she examined me. "You possess the capacity?" she inquired. "I possess the trust," I corrected. "And in this industry, that is the sole capacity that matters." We departed that structure with a $2 million agreement. We did not steal it. Ashworth Briar had dropped it, and we merely happened to be the ones standing there with a glove. The backlash was inevitable. 2 days after the deal was announced in the trade publications, the rumors commenced. I began receiving messages from old colleagues. Preston was informing everyone who would listen that I had stolen proprietary enterprise data. He was claiming I had downloaded the master database before I departed and utilized it to poach their distribution network. I occupied my office at Ironwood Alliance, reading a cease and desist letter that Ashworth Briar's legal team had transmitted to Beckett. It accused me of misappropriating trade secrets. Beckett appeared concerned. "Did you take anything, Vivian? Any documents? Any directories?" I laughed. It was a genuine, hearty laugh. "Beckett," I declared, "there was no database to steal. That was the complete complication." I drafted the response myself. I clarified that the contact information for the suppliers was publicly available to anyone with an internet search. I clarified that the relationships were personal, not contractual property. And then I added a line that provided me immense satisfaction. I wrote, "Any information regarding supplier history is currently residing in the sent items folder of the email account I utilized for 11 years. The fact that Ashworth Briar management cannot locate or organize this data is an operational failure, not a theft." They never responded to the letter. They comprehended I was accurate. They were attempting to sue me for their own incompetence. Yet the universe, it appears, possesses a sense of humor darker than my own. While the legal threats were fizzling out, an explosive went off in the court of public opinion. It was a Friday evening. I was at residence observing a film with my son when my telephone commenced vibrating intensely. It was not work emails this time. It was social media notifications. A former assistant at Ashworth Briar, a young woman who had resigned 2 days after I did, had posted a video to a private industry group online. Yet nothing on the internet remains private. The caption read, "This is why I departed. Leadership at its finest." I clicked the link. The video was shaky, filmed surreptitiously from a lap or under a table, yet the audio was crystal clear. It was the retreat. I observed the blurry image of Celeste standing on the platform, liquid dripping from the table. I heard the silence of the chamber, and then I heard the voice that had haunted my dreams for weeks. "My cat possesses more intelligence than you." The camera panned slightly, just enough to capture the back of my head as I knelt on the surface. And then it captured the laugh. Thurston's loud, booming, red-faced laugh. The video cut to black as I elevated myself. It had gone viral. It had jumped from the industry group to social platforms. The hashtag toxic nepotism was trending. The hashtag corporate horror was trending. Individuals were furious. The internet does not appreciate bullies, and it genuinely does not appreciate wealthy, out-of-touch executives humiliating their personnel. The comments were brutal. Imagine being a chief executive and laughing while your daughter degrades an employee. Trash. I will never purchase furniture from these individuals again. Who is the woman on the surface? She handled that with more dignity than that complete family possesses in their smallest finger. My name was not mentioned in the video, yet anyone who comprehended the industry comprehended it was me. I observed the view count tick up. 50,000, 100,000, 500,000. Ashworth Breyer was not merely losing agreements now. They were losing their brand. They were being exposed as exactly what they were. A shiny veneer over a rotten core. Then the telephone rang. It was Thurston. I gazed at the screen. It was 9 at evening. He never called this late unless the structure was on fire. In a manner it was. I answered. "Hello, Thurston." "Vivian," he declared. He sounded breathless, panicked. "You have observed it." "I have observed it," I declared. "You require assisting us," he declared. "The board is freaking out. Investors are calling. We require issuing a joint statement." "A statement?" I inquired. "Yes," Thurston declared. "We require you to declare it was an inside joke. Declare that you and Celeste are friends. Declare that the video is taken out of context. We will compensate you. We will compensate you a consulting fee. $50,000. Simply write a post online clearing this up." I listened to him. I listened to the desperation in his voice. He was offering me finances to sell my dignity. He desired me to be the custodian one last time. He desired me to clean up the disorder his daughter had made, just like I had cleaned up the water containers. I experienced a frigid, hard resolve settle in my chest. "Thurston," I declared quietly, "you are not listening." "What do you desire?" he demanded. 100,000, Vivian. This is destroying the enterprise reputation. "The reputation you earned," I declared. I gazed over at my son, who was observing me from the sofa. "I do not execute public relations for cruelty, Thurston," I declared. "I cleaned up your disorders for 11 years. I am done." "But," he commenced. "Good evening, Thurston." I hung up. I blocked the number. My son examined me. He had observed the video. He comprehended what they had executed to me. "Are you acceptable, Mom?" he inquired. "You should ruin them. You should go on the news and inform everyone everything." I occupied a seat beside him. I retrieved the remote control and turned off the television, silencing the noise of the world. "No," I declared. "Why not?" he inquired. His teenage countenance was flushed with righteous anger. "They deserve it. You should crush them into the ground." I placed my hand on his shoulder. "Attend to me," I declared. "That is not how we win." I examined him in the eyes. "Revenge is not about crushing them down," I informed him. "It is not about screaming or fighting in the mud. Revenge is standing up so straight, so tall, and so successful that they are forced to gaze up and observe exactly who they forced to kneel." My son examined me for an extended moment. Then he nodded. "You are already taller than them, Mom," he declared. "Yes," I declared, leaning back into the cushions. "I believe I am." The video would continue to circulate. The brand would continue to burn, yet I would not add a single log to the fire. I possessed an agreement to fulfill, a team to lead, and an existence to live. And for the first time, none of it belonged to them. The news did not arrive to me through a telephone call or a rumor. It materialized in my inbox at 6 a.m, delivered by the Furnishings Industry Daily Newsletter. It was the lead narrative, bold and undeniable. Ashworth Breyer suspends Heritage Collection introduction amid distribution network collapse. I occupied my kitchen table sipping coffee and read the article. It was an autopsy of a catastrophe I had predicted months prior. The article detailed how the enterprise had been forced to issue full refunds to over 3,000 customers who had pre-ordered the collection. It mentioned that major retailers were invoking penalty clauses for non-delivery. It estimated the financial loss in the millions. The article quoted an anonymous insider who described the internal situation as chaotic and directionless. I comprehended that insider was presumably a mid-level manager I used to have lunch with, someone observing their annual bonus evaporate because the individuals at the top believed they could replace relationships with intimidation. By noon, the human cost of that headline became clear. My professional networking feed commenced populating with the green banners of individuals seeking employment. Ashworth Breyer had initiated a reduction in force. They were cutting costs to stop the bleeding. The junior designers, the distribution center personnel, the customer service representatives. Innocent individuals were losing their livelihoods because Thurston and his team had gambled on arrogance and lost. Yet the axe did not merely descend on the innocent. It swung for the architects of the failure, too. I heard from Francine's associate in personnel administration that Preston Blackwood had been terminated. He was escorted out of the structure by security carrying a single container, leaving behind a legacy of burned bridges and a confused personnel. His optimization strategy had optimized him right out of employment. And Celeste, she was the proprietor's daughter, so she could not be dismissed, yet she could be hidden. The newsletter mentioned that she had been reassigned to oversee showroom operations. It was a humiliating demotion. The woman who desired to be a global brand strategist was now going to be arranging pillows and greeting customers in the retail location, far away from the boardroom where she had spilled those water containers. I experienced a complex mixture of emotions. Vindication, certainly, yet additionally a heavy sadness. I had invested 11 years assisting in constructing that place. Observing it crumble was like observing a residence you used to inhabit burn down, even if the landlord had been terrible. That afternoon, my telephone buzzed. It was a message from a number I did not have saved, yet I recognized the area code. It is Preston. Do you possess 5 minutes? I am not recording this. I merely desire to inquire you something. I debated disregarding it. I owed him nothing. Yet curiosity is a powerful force. I proceeded out to the balcony of the Ironwood Alliance office and dialed the number. He answered on the first ring. "Hello, Preston," I declared. "Hi, Vivian." He sounded different. The slick corporate veneer was gone. He sounded tired. He sounded like an individual who had been running a marathon in concrete footwear. "I observed the news," I declared. "Yeah," he declared. "It is a disorder. Thurston is seeking blood. I was the easiest target." There was a pause. I waited. "I merely desired to comprehend," Preston declared, his voice dropping lower. "How did you execute it?" "Execute what?" "How did you obtain the glass individual in Pennsylvania to expedite orders without an agreement?" he inquired. "I offered him 20% over asking price and he informed me to go to hell. You never compensated him extra." I gazed out at the city skyline. "I inquired him about his grandchildren, Preston," I declared. "What?" "I inquired about his grandchildren," I repeated. "I comprehended his wife had surgery last year. I comprehended he was worried about passing the enterprise on to his son. I did not merely contact him when I required something. I contacted him when I did not require anything, merely to check in." Preston was silent. I could practically hear his brain attempting to process this data point. "I believe that was merely small talk," he declared. I believed it was inefficient. "Small talk is the labor, Preston," I informed him. "It is not the wrapper around the employment. It is the mortar that maintains the bricks together. You attempted to construct a wall without mortar. You merely stacked bricks on top of each other and hoped gravity would maintain them. Yet when the wind blew, it all descended." He released an extended sigh. "I genuinely messed this up, did I not?" "Yes," I declared. "You did." I anticipated him to request a referral. I anticipated him to inquire if Ironwood Alliance was employing. If he had, I would have hung up. Yet he surprised me. "Thanks for the lesson, Vivian," he declared. "Good luck with the new position." He hung up. He did not apologize for treating me like a secretary, yet he had admitted he was mistaken. For an individual like Preston, That was likely the closest he would ever achieve to redemption. I returned to my workstation. I possessed genuine labor to execute. I was drafting a new ethical sourcing agreement for a ceramicist in Oregon. I was constructing, not destroying. 2 hours later, the telephone rang again. This time it was the main line of the Ashworth Briar showroom. I answered, assuming it was a misdirected call from a supplier. "This is Vivian." There was a hesitation on the other end. A breathy, uncertain silence. "Vivian, it is Celeste." I froze. I had not conversed with her since the retreat, since she examined me with that imperious sneer and compared me to her cat. "Hello, Celeste," I declared. My tone was cool, stripped of any warmth. I desired to contact you," she commenced. She sounded younger than 26. She sounded like a teenager who had crashed her father's vehicle. "I observed the video, the one online. I did not post it," I declared quickly. "I comprehend," she declared. "I comprehend you did not. You would not execute that." She paused. "I am sorry, Vivian." I declared nothing. I permitted the silence stretch. Apologies are effortless when you have lost. They solely signify something when you are winning. "I did not intend it the manner it sounded," she rushed on. "It is merely growing up with my father. That is how he communicates. He perpetually informed me that if you are pleasant to personnel, they will walk all over you. He informed me that you must establish dominance early or individuals will not respect you." I listened to her. I recognized then that she was a monster of Thurston's making. She had been raised in a petri dish of toxicity, taught that cruelty was a leadership skill. She was not merely unkind. She was uneducated in the methods of being a decent human being. "That is a fabrication, Celeste," I declared. "I comprehend that now," she whispered. "I am in the showroom. The customers. They examine me like I am garbage. The sales personnel will not communicate with me. I experience so small. You are experiencing what you made me experience," I declared. "I comprehend," she declared, her voice cracking. "And I am sorry. You were the sole one who genuinely executed any labor. I observe that now." I closed my eyes for a moment. I could have crushed her. I could have informed her that she was a spoiled brat who deserved every portion of misery she was receiving. It would have experienced good for approximately 10 seconds. "Celeste," I declared, "I appreciate the apology." "So you forgive me?" she inquired, hope creeping into her voice. "No," I declared. "I do not." The hope vanished. "Forgiveness requires time," I informed her. "And it requires action. You are in the showroom now. That is a beneficial place to commence. Learn how to sell a sofa. Learn how to communicate to an individual who is spending their hard-earned finances. Learn the names of the individuals who labor with you. If you execute that for a year, perhaps then we can discuss forgiveness." "Acceptable," she declared quietly. "Acceptable I will." I hung up. I did not experience triumphant. I experienced like a parent who had just disciplined a child that was not mine. I packed up my bag to depart. It had been an extended day of emotional reckoning. I was looking forward to observing my son, to eating dinner, to forgetting about Ashworth Briar. I proceeded out to the reception area. The receptionist, a bright young woman named Sarah, gazed up. "Vivian, a courier just dropped this off for you," she declared. She provided me a thick, heavy envelope. It was from a law firm, not the one Ashworth Briar usually utilized. A new one, an expensive one. I experienced a frigid prickle on the back of my neck. I opened the envelope right there in the lobby. I extracted the cover letter. The words swam before my eyes, heavy with legal jargon. Civil action. Ashworth Briar Furnishings versus Vivian Mercer. Complaint for misappropriation of trade secrets, breach of fiduciary duty, and tortious interference with business relations. They were suing me. I scanned the document. They were claiming that my memory, my knowledge of the suppliers, my relationships, the very things they had refused to document, was their property. They were claiming that by departing and working for a competitor, I had stolen their proprietary business intelligence. They were seeking damages. They were seeking an injunction to stop me from working at Ironwood Alliance. Thurston. He recognized he could not guilt me back. He recognized he could not purchase me back. So now he was going to attempt to destroy me legally. He was blaming me for the collapse he had engineered. I examined the papers. My hands shook slightly, not from fear, yet from a white-hot rage. He still did not comprehend. He believed this was about documents and data. He did not comprehend that you cannot sue someone for being competent. You cannot sue someone for possessing friends. I placed the papers back in the envelope. Sarah examined me, concerned. Is everything acceptable, Vivian? I examined her. A smile touched my lips. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a woman who comprehends exactly where the confidential matters are buried, and who has just been provided a shovel. No, Sarah, I declared. Everything is not acceptable. I tucked the lawsuit under my arm. Yet it is about to become very interesting. Thurston desired a conflict. He desired to drag this into a courtroom. He desired to make me the villain of his narrative so he did not have to examine the mirror. Unfortunate miscalculation. He had forgotten one thing. In a courtroom, everything becomes entered into the public record. Every email, every unpaid invoice, every toxic directive. He was not suing me. He was inviting me to testify, and I was more than prepared to take the stand. The courtroom was smaller than I anticipated. It was not the dramatic high-ceiling arena you observe on television. It was a windowless chamber with fluorescent lighting and a carpet that smelled of industrial cleaner. Yet the stakes were elevated enough to make the atmosphere experience thin. Thurston occupied the plaintiff's table. He was wearing a navy suit that appeared costly, yet he appeared diminished. His countenance was gray, and he refused to make eye contact with me. Beside him positioned two attorneys from a high-priced firm, their table covered in binders that I comprehended were mostly empty substance. I occupied the other side with my attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Helena, provided by Ironwood Alliance's legal insurance. We possessed one thin folder between us. The hearing was for a preliminary injunction. Ashworth Breyer desired a court order to stop me from working for Ironwood Alliance for 12 months. Their argument was that I was causing them irreparable harm by utilizing their proprietary trade secrets. Thurston's lead attorney rose. He was an individual who clearly appreciated the sound of his own voice. Your Honor, he commenced, gesturing dramatically toward me. Ms. Mercer was a trusted confidant of the executive team. She had access to the complete distribution network of Ashworth Breyer. She has taken that confidential network, a network constructed over decades, and transferred it to a direct competitor. This is a clear misappropriation of enterprise assets. The judge, a woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, examined the motion. Counsel, she declared, her voice dry. I observe the allegation, yet I am examining for the employment agreement, specifically the non-compete agreement signed by the defendant. Thurston's attorney shifted his weight. Well, Your Honor, as we have noted in the brief, Ms. Mercer was a long-term employee. While a formal non-compete was not updated in her recent file, her fiduciary duty serves as an implied agreement. The judge elevated an eyebrow. So there is no non-compete? She inquired. There is an implied duty of loyalty, the attorney insisted. And what about the trade secrets? The judge inquired. You claim she stole a database. Do you possess a log of the documents she downloaded? Do you possess a forensic report demonstrating a data transfer? The attorney cleared his throat. He examined Thurston, who was gazing at the table. The database, Your Honor, was intellectual. Ms. Mercer memorized the proprietary information. The judge removed her glasses. She examined me, then back at the plaintiff's table. Permit me to comprehend this, she declared. You are informing me that your client, a multi-million-dollar enterprise, maintained its complete distribution network inside an employee's consciousness, failed to have her sign a non-compete, and now desires to ban her from earning a livelihood because she remembers the individuals she labored with for 11 years. Thurston's attorney opened his mouth to argue, yet my attorney, Helena, rose. Your Honor, if I may, Helena declared calmly. We not only reject the claim that these relationships are trade secrets, Yet we additionally possess evidence that the plaintiff is utilizing this lawsuit to cover up their own negligence and financial misconduct. Thurston's head snapped up. This was the portion he did not anticipate. Helena opened our thin folder. We possess sworn affidavits from 17 independent manufacturing suppliers, she declared. She provided a stack of papers to the bailiff to present to the judge. These documents demonstrate that Ashworth Breyer has been structurally delinquent on disbursements for years, Helena continued. Furthermore, we possess emails transmitted by the plaintiff's new management threatening these suppliers with baseless legal action if they did not prioritize their orders. Ms. Mercer did not steal these suppliers, Your Honor. The suppliers fled a toxic business partner and reached out to Ms. Mercer for safety. The judge flipped through the pages. Her eyes scanned the numbers. She observed the 90-day overdue notices. She observed the threatening letters from Preston Blackwood. This is significant, the judge muttered. Then Helena played her final card. Additionally, Your Honor, regarding the claim of a confidential and professional environment, we would like to submit into evidence the video recording from the Enterprise retreat, which is currently public knowledge. It speaks to the hostile work environment that compelled my client to resign. I observed Thurston flinch. He comprehended the video. Everyone comprehended the video. The judge waved her hand. I have observed the clip, counsel. It is not relevant to the trade secret statute, yet it certainly paints a picture of why the defendant might desire to depart. The judge closed the file. She examined directly at Thurston. Mr. Wainwright, she declared. Her voice was stern. I am denying the motion for an injunction. You cannot sue an employee for your own failure to maintain records. You cannot claim ownership over human relationships, especially when you have treated those relationships with such disregard. Thurston appeared like he had been struck. And I would caution you, the judge added. If you proceed to a full trial, all of these financial records regarding your debts to suppliers will become portion of the public record. Given your current reputational challenges, I suggest you consider whether that is a wise path. The gavel descended with a sound that experienced like a heavy door slamming shut on the past. We departed the courtroom into the corridor. Thurston and his attorneys emerged a moment later. Thurston examined me for a second. I believed he might shout. I believed he might hurl one last insult, yet he did not. He examined me, and I observed something I had never observed in him before. Defeat. He appeared old. He recognized that the machine he believed he owned had never genuinely been his. It had been mine. And now that I was gone, he was merely an individual in a suit with a lot of debt, and no one to repair it. He departed without a word. 2 days later, my attorney received a notice. Ashworth Breyer was dropping the lawsuit with prejudice. They signed a settlement agreement ensuring they would never pursue this again. I did not request finances. I did not request an apology. I merely signed the paper and transmitted it back. Silence was my victory. The following Monday, I entered Beckett Harrington's office at Ironwood Alliance. He was positioned at his desk reviewing the sales figures for the new line we had introduced for Meridian Home Collections. The introduction had been flawless. The furniture was beautiful, the delivery was punctual, and the suppliers had been compensated in full. He gazed up and smiled. You beat them, he declared. I survived them, I corrected. There is a difference. Beckett shook his head. No, Vivian, you beat them. You proved that executing business the right manner is genuinely a better business model. He opened his drawer and extracted a document. I have been contemplating, Beckett declared. We are growing fast. The infrastructures you constructed in the previous 2 months are scalable. You did not merely plug a hole. You constructed a foundation. He slid the document toward me. I do not desire you to be an employee anymore, Vivian, he declared. I desire you to be a partner. I examined the document. It was a grant of equity. It was an offer of ownership in the enterprise. I do not desire you to ever experience like you are merely a pair of hands again, Beckett declared. I desire you to possess a stake in what you are constructing. I retrieved the pen. My hand did not shake. I signed my name next to his. I was not merely a supplier partnership manager anymore. I was a co-owner of an enterprise that treated individuals with dignity. That evening, I took my son out to dinner to celebrate. We proceeded to his favorite Italian place, the one with the checkered tablecloths and the garlic bread he appreciated. We occupied a booth near the window. He was laughing, informing me about an examination he had excelled at in history class. I observed him and experienced a profound sensation of peace. The knots in my stomach were gone. The phantom ringing of my telephone had stopped. "Mom," he declared, pausing between bites of pasta. "Do you remember what that woman declared to you? The unkind one?" I took a sip of my water. I remembered every syllable. "Yes," I declared. "I remember. My cat possesses more intelligence than you," my son quoted, shaking his head. What a foolish thing to declare. I smiled. I contemplated Celeste, stuck in the showroom, attempting to learn humility the difficult manner. I contemplated Thurston positioned in his empty boardroom. I contemplated the fetch game. "You comprehend," I declared to my son. She was not entirely mistaken. He examined me, confused. "What do you signify?" "Well," I declared, "a cat can learn to fetch a toy in 2 days. It is a simple trick. It makes the owner experience powerful." I leaned forward. Yet learning how to respect other human beings. Learning that you cannot construct a kingdom by stepping on individuals. Some individuals invest their complete existences, attempting to learn that, and they still fail. My son grinned. "So you are declaring you are smarter than the cat?" I laughed. "I am declaring that I am smart enough to comprehend when to depart," I declared. "And that is the sole intelligence that matters." I compensated the bill. We departed into the cool evening atmosphere. I did not examine back. Being underestimated had been painful. Yes, it had burned like acid. Yet as I proceeded toward my vehicle, toward my new existence as a partner, toward a future I owned, I recognized that the fire had not destroyed me. It had forged me. I was not the one who had been dropped. I was the one who had finally learned how to fly. Thank you so much for listening to this narrative. I would appreciate knowing where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and share your thoughts on Vivian's journey. If you enjoyed this narrative, please make sure to subscribe to the Boss Revenge Stories channel, like the video, and hit that hype button so we can share this narrative with even more individuals.